Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about something that was brought up in my Instagram DMs yesterday, and I realized that this is something that not many people really understand. And so I'm going to make this video just because I want to set the record straight on it. And that is, what is the actual role of accessory exercises with strength training, with getting stronger? So basically, if you're looking at this from a powerlifting scope, you are judged on three main lifts, right? The squat, the bench press, and the deadlift. So you need to primarily get stronger in those three movements, okay? And so the best way to get stronger at a specific lift is to do that specific lift. It's the same thing as like if somebody was to come up to you and say, how do I get better at algebra? Well, you would say you should do algebra. You wouldn't say, well, I would think about like doing geometry, and because it is math and it's similar, like, you could get, you're going to get better at algebra. Like, that's not exactly true. You might get a little bit better in general at math, but you will not get as good as you possibly could get at algebra. How this applies to strength training is that if you want to get as strong on, let's say, the squat as you possibly can, you should focus most of your volume for your legs and what you know that you can recover from on squats. Accessory exercises play a role that is going to be different in different phases of training. So let's first look at a strength block. So how should you incorporate accessories in conjunction with the compound exercises, like the actual exercise that you want to get stronger at? So in the strength phase, most of your volume should be delegated towards whatever, whatever lift that you want to get better at. So let's say on you're trying to get better at a high bar squat. That's your style of competition lift. You should focus most of your volume on high bar squats for that strength, because remember, we only have a finite recovery ability, and because with strength you can't do as much volume and actually recover from it, because it's just more taxing on your nervous system, more systemically fatiguing. You cannot recover from as much volume. The role of accessory movements, so in this context, let's say for a squat, the high bar squat, you would do something like leg press, lunges, stuff like that. That are going to be, very highly stimulative of similar musculature. In a strength phase, the goal is not to really build muscle. Can muscle growth still happen in a strength phase? Absolutely. But that is not the primary goal. The primary goal of a strength phase is strength. So accessory exercises in a strength phase should be there mainly for the maintenance of muscle, not necessarily to grow as much muscle as possible. However, now looking at hypertrophy is a much more general phase of training, because hypertrophy is stimulus and volume dependent. So if we get enough stimulus and enough volume to disrupt our homeostasis, to disrupt our physiology, to trigger an adaptive response, we will see hypertrophy. We will see muscle growth. Now, you can incorporate a lot more accessory movements into hypertrophy, and you probably should. Just because if you are constantly accumulating volume on one specific movement, you're going to come into an issue of adaptive resistance. So a really good example of this is the squat every day method of training. So basically, if you're coming in and you're constantly just hammering squats and whatnot, like if you're not used to that, you're eventually, you're going to see crazy results, like very, very, very fast. But eventually, you're going to run into adaptive resistance, which is basically when it becomes harder and harder to actually progress on that specific movement. So with hypertrophy, you should take a little bit less volume directed right at that competition movement or whatever movement you're trying to get higher, just to avoid that, to allow your body to, I guess, have a little bit less adaptive resistance. But you should have, at minimum, enough volume on that specific movement to maintain the technique so that it's not a foreign movement to you. Also, it's a good idea to have that specific movement and still do higher rep ranges, just because you'll be able to hypertrophy that specific musculature a little bit better. Now, with accessories and what the real role is and what the real benefit of them is in these hypertrophy phases. Because if you have a, if you're doing more accessory work that's not specific, you can accumulate more volume in general, just because it's not going to be as systemically fatiguing, like per unit volume. For an accessory exercise, a split squat opposed to a barbell back squat is going to have much less of a fatigue cost relative to the stimulus. And so if you can get a bigger muscle, you grow your legs, for example, on a squat. How that accessory movement then helps you get a stronger lift is once you go back into a strength phase, because you have increases in muscle cross-sectional area, or the size of the muscle, you can then have more potential for strength. And once you teach that muscle to become more neuromuscularly efficient and your training becomes more specific at the squat, then you can take advantage of what you have actually built in that hypertrophy phase with the muscle to then become stronger, okay? But do not get it twisted that doing a lunge specifically is going to get you have a better squat. Looking at a case study, Steffi Cohen, she's, if you guys don't know her, she's a world record holder. She holds 25 all-time records in powerlifting. She's extremely strong. She talked about how she took some time away from sumo deadlift because she heard, if I do conventional deadlifts, then that will really help my sumo deadlift go up. She said that in that block of training, she did improve her conventional, but her sumo didn't go up at all. And I think she said it even actually regressed, just because she lost that technique. She said that she was mainly just doing a conventional sumo because she kind of forgot how to pull sumo. So that's a really good example of why, if you want to actually get stronger at a specific movement, you need to do that movement. Doing an accessory lift will not get you stronger specifically at that movement. How it will help you is in hypertrophy phases with getting the muscle bigger. Another really, and there's a reason why in peaking phases of for competition, you mainly will only be doing your competition movements, because that's how you get the strongest. That's how you express the most strength on specific movements, is by allocating as much of that recovery that you have to that specific movement in lower rep ranges that are closer to your 1 rep max. So anyways, I rambled about this long enough. I hope that this makes sense. In summary, use accessory exercises in hypertrophy phases to help build that muscle up, to get a stronger base, to get a bigger muscle. So then once you go into strength and then you start training that specific movement more, then you can have that increased potential to get stronger, because muscle cross-sectional area, muscle size, is directly correlated with potential for strength that your muscle will have. More muscle, more potential for strength, bigger total, bigger lifts. You get the picture. Once you come back and you teach that bigger muscle to become more neuromuscularly efficient, because there's a greater degree of motor unit recruitment and muscle that you actually can recruit per motor neuron, you can get stronger than you were before. So anyways, hope you guys liked the video. If you guys liked it, please like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.